Well, good evening, everyone. We're going to call our meeting to order, and I'd like to start with the pledge to the flag. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First on our agenda this evening is communication from the public and press. I don't see any press, but I believe I do see a couple of members of the public here. Is there anything that you'd like to state by way of a statement to the board?
Yes.
Yes? I would like to review some guidelines, please, before you do. We do think it's crucial to hear from community members about their concerns and issues, but we ask you to adhere to a few guidelines. Please come to the lectern and state your name. Please do address the board as a whole and not individual board members. Limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes, and if you can give us any written notes, we'd appreciate that as well. Public comment is not a time for back and forth with members of the board. We're not going to be responding to any questions that you may have. We will make every effort to answer questions and respond to those comments when an adequate answer is researched and we can give to you. Lastly, and this is very important, due to federal and state privacy laws, we will not allow comments or questions about any school personnel. Personnel concerns should be addressed privately through administrative channels. And we would also encourage you and urge you to leave any student names out of your comments. That being said, please proceed.
Hi, my name is Darcy Fernier. I'm here to speak on behalf of my daughter, who has quite frankly been traumatized. And I wrote a statement. I'll read it. And I've left all the names out. The guidelines were emailed to me, so I am prepared. So first, I'd like to express my concern regarding the treatment of students that are placed in ISS and the conduct of the teacher aide assigned to that classroom. Denying children access to the bathroom for an extended periods of time, resulting in students sitting in soiled or specifically bloody clothing for hours. It's unacceptable. Using bathroom access as a control mechanism is not discipline. It's a violation of basic human dignity and causes significant emotional and psychological harm. Going to the bathroom is a basic human right, not a privilege to be withheld. Multiple parents have reported that students in this classroom are required to sit completely straight and remain still for hours, and are publicly humiliated, degraded, and intentionally intimidated. Children sent to this class are not being corrected or supported, they're being bullied. No child should fear attending school, especially due to the actions of an adult entrusted with their care. I was told that by the principal that not everyone likes everyone, which is not an acceptable response. Respect is not optional in an educational environment. I was also told that students are kept in this position specifically so they'll be afraid of ISS. Fear-based punishment, humiliation, and degradation are not appropriate behavioral management tools, and they, quite frankly, have no place in our school system. The responsibility of the educators and administrators are to educate, empower, and advocate for our children and their safety, not to break them down emotionally to enforce compliance. Discipline should never come at the cost of a child's dignity, physical well-being, or mental health. I'm requesting that this matter be taken seriously and addressed immediately. This includes the review of the ISS practices, bathroom access policies, and the conduct of the staff supervising these students. Children should be able to attend school without fear of mistreatment, intimidation, or humiliation by those in the authority to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your comments. Thank you again. Okay, moving on. Is there anyone else that has anything they would like to share with the Board of Education? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to information and reports, and we'll start with reports from board members and Mr. David's student ex officio report.
Well, to start, the student council is hosting a ski trip in a couple of weeks, and just to Titus for day. There's not a lot to be said about that, but as IB classes start to ramp up, the Chromebooks become more and more of a concern, and to the point where during the school day, I've noticed that both me and my peers are avoiding doing work within class period or class time given to us, or even study halls, to be able to work on essays and presentations at home with personal computers. A lot of these include the essays given to us by full IB classes, or IB classes in general, including internal assessments as well as theory of knowledge essays. Other classes do assign these extended where you have to create extended documents that take a very long time for Chromebooks to load and become unusable, especially when doing research and trying to find credible sources, as many things, including images for presentations and a wide variety of sources in links. Yeah, that's the main thing I have to say about that. But on another note, the transition from IB to AP. I'd like to reiterate that I am in full support of this, as you will see in this presentation. But there are some things that I think people might miss about IB, but I think in general, it's a move that I am in full support of. That was, I wish I could have been here for it to go through it myself. So in terms of credit, first off, so there's like three ways you get credit for. So you get the IB or AP credit through the school, and you get whatever towards your IB diploma. For colleges, there are two options, either through SUNY Canton, which is accepted at some levels, but a lot of private schools will not accept SUNY Canton credit. The other way is based on the grade you get in the IB class. A lot of schools, especially prestigious schools, will only accept a grade of 5 to 6, or maybe just a 7. A couple of schools that I've applied to so Cornell will only accept a 7, or RPI, a state school in New York, will only accept a 6 or a 7. Versus AP, it's similar, where Cornell will only accept a 5, and then RPI will accept a 4 or 5. But the boundaries of what % of students will get these grades is drastically different. For IB classes, anywhere from, on average, 5 to 10% of students will get a 7. Versus AP classes, it's usually anywhere from 10 to 40% of students will get a 5. Just to show how much more accepted AP classes are at college, for a variety of reasons that I will talk about. Another thing that is a very large consideration is the difference between SL and HL classes. SL being standard level and HL being higher level. This terminology from the IB is detrimental to themselves, as well as making it harder for students to get those classes accepted by colleges. Colleges do not look at standard level as the difficulty that it is, and more of the inferior version of the of their HL counterparts. When standard level courses are just as hard, if not sometimes harder, because you have only a little bit less information in half the year. Because many HL courses are 2 years, while SLs are 1 year. Versus AP courses, which are all built for 1 year and are much more recognized by colleges with clear levels and specifics on what the class will cover. And as it's been around for longer, colleges know exactly what to accept or expect from AP. On the next slide, the rigor and value of AP. IB will prepare you for where you're going to go. AP is going to help you get your foot in the door. AP is less rigorous than IB, which in some cases you may argue that IB will be better for you because it'll prepare you more. You'll be more ready for college. You'll be better organized. But on the other hand, you won't get to the places that you would be able to use those skills. For with AP, you'll be able to get to those places, and then once you're there, you'll learn. And because you're able to take AP courses from your freshman year, so you'll have much more experience for a longer period of time with these harder classes, I feel that you'll be just as prepared, if not more, because you've been dealing with it for longer, and possibly less burnout. The acceptance into prestigious colleges, okay. In my case, I'm applying to a handful of colleges of all varieties, some of them being very prestigious, and the downside of that is I do not expect to get a 7 in a lot of my classes. So 70, maybe 80% of all the classes I take won't really carry over as college credit as they would to, say, SUNY Potsdam or SUNY Canton. On top of that, some colleges require to apply that you take certain classes. Like University of Toronto requires that you take the highest level of chemistry that your school offers, in usually being the first level of advanced chemistry, like AP or IB chemistry. This school does not offer that, so I had to go through a little bit of a process to get a waiver for that requirement, getting it signed by both Mr. Oliver and Mr. Jordan. On the other hand, on the US side, Caltech is one of the most rigorous applications, requiring a one step further behind the farthest calculus we offer. This was not waived, and if I want to go to Caltech, I will take Calculus 2 over the summer. Yeah. And then the final thing, the capstone versus IB diploma. IB diploma is a little bit more representative of college in that you have to take certain classes, so French, history, English, a science, and then another couple classes. The capstone gives you a little bit more wiggle room. It gives you flexibility in what you might want to take, which for Massena, I think that would offer a lot more variety in what we can offer for AP classes, which would not just help out what we consider our full IB students, which in this year is actually just 3 students. It would generate interest in classes that are maybe less rigorous or maybe more open to students who might not consider IB a possibility. Maybe not an AP math class, but maybe there's an AP music or AP ceramics that would give college credit to a student that might otherwise not take any college classes in high school. Yeah.
Any questions for Andrew?
Go ahead, Kevin.
No, you go ahead.
Okay, thank you for all the research. You really looked into this. And having said all of that, you're okay with IB?
As it stands, IB is kind of what I have to deal with, but I'm okay with IB, but AP is, I'll just say that I wish I could have been here for AP.
Okay. Now, with this, that's a whole other thing, I guess, yeah. And
Yeah.
it's already been decided, probably. With the switch, I'm going back to the Chromebooks now.
Yeah.
Will that make a difference? With the switch, will the Chromebooks work next year? Will it work better for the other?
From what I know, from what my friends have to deal with in terms of writing essays and things, they are shorter, but in certain circumstances, it still will not work because the amount of research and the amount of writing that you still have to do is still a lot, but it's not quite the scale of, say, your IA, which maybe it's not the 3,000 words, but it's the 22 to 30 pages of graphs that just slows down the Chromebooks. APA doesn't really have that equivalent.
Okay.
So I think it would be better, but in certain areas, especially in like writing, I've noticed that Chromebooks sometimes are a little slow. So.
And yeah, I guess I'm bothered by the fact that we can't help you out with that. I know we did push for it a little bit, and we're told, well, then the other groups will want it as well. But I think we put a lot of money into special ed, which we should.
Yeah.
But I'd like to see something go more toward the advanced students as well. But that's just my take on it. Go ahead.
I want to thank you for your work on this presentation. I think you're going to do fine no matter where you go, because this is pretty rare. And it's unfortunate that no matter how many questions have been asked over the years, that we're just now getting to the chance to get a bite at this. And I'm sorry that this is the case.
I will say that there is a benefit that I didn't have to take the IB chemistry, because I get through with the Regents chemistry, and so I guess there's that. But.
Yeah. Looks like we're heading in the right direction. I'm sorry you won't be able to participate in that, but thank you for your efforts, and you're a shining example of what we can produce.
I hope the future students can take great advantage of this.
Thanks.
Yep.
Andrea, I have a question as well. How are you handling the, are you being given a waiver? Are you able to bring in a PC that is able to help you do the research and the document generation and so forth that you need for IB?
I do it at home on this guy.
You do it at home. Okay, so I guess that is what you said. You don't really have the opportunity to work on any of the stuff at school. You have to handle it all at home.
This is the second time he's brought that same thing up, that there's no chance for them to work in the middle of the day if they get a moment of time, because the capacity of the widget isn't there.
Well, yeah, I have time in the day. I have a study hall. Sometimes teachers will give you a full class period to work. It's just when I pull up the document, I type, and then 10 seconds later, it's there. So.
Can I ask a few questions? How many students do we have in IB? Roughly, does anybody?
I would say that there are a lot of students in IB, but the students that this applies to is dependent on the class. So classes with a lot of writing in their IA would be psychology, business, IB, or bio, math, physics, and statistics, as well as those in full IB. Those would be the classes that would, their students would basically be working mainly at home. Well, number one, due to the length of the documents and how long it takes to load them. And number two, the extensive research that has to be done on these documents. That is, a lot of it is blocked, which I'm not sure is something we can solve here. No. But just holding all those tabs open is also very difficult.
So if you had a faster processing PC to use during the school day and a PC that stayed here, would that make your ability to do your IB work more efficient?
Yes.
So I guess kind of what I'm getting at is you know, we're probably not talking about a full district replacement of all Chromebooks, but if we can really look at where we have funds available to get an idea of the level of PC or the power of PC that these students really require. I feel that we've heard this for about 5 months now, and it would be nice to maybe get a finger on an idea or a cost of how many PCs times whatever the cost may be to really kind of get to the bottom of this problem. And they said last month that AP could correct the problem. However, it's still not guaranteed if they're still doing advanced coursework. And I think it's our job as board members to make sure that we're giving, and all of us in the district, to make sure we're giving our kids the tools to be successful. So I'd like to have some further discussion or see if we can really get into a more finite number of what that could really look like. If the board can authorize that or approve it, that's something that I personally would welcome, but I'm just one.
I believe that a couple of months ago that directive was given to Mr. Oliver to take back to the tech group, and when it came back, if I'm not mistaken, maybe Mrs. Flynn remembers, but the number of computers that we would need would be in excess of over $40,000 for the remainder of this course, for the remainder of this year.
For this year,
And
okay.
there wasn't enough convinced, I think, at the adult level, in the group that was looking at it, that the payoff would be there.
Was there IB teacher input on that as well too?
Yes, I believe the teachers were consulted
Teachers were
as well.
consulted too? Okay, all right. Just want to make sure all parties were
I
were
believe so.
consulted, so, okay, that's good.
And again, I think as Andrew has said, it's not necessarily for all of the IB classes. It would be some
Right.
of them. So not all the teachers necessarily would say, yes, I had to have that for my program, where others were saying,
Right.
yes, it would be beneficial.
So was that 40,000 trimmed down to the IB students?
It was
that
trimmed down for the
so
ones.
that's right on.
I
Okay,
believe that for
okay.
the students that were enrolled in those types of classes, it was around 20.
Yeah,
Again, I don't have the exact number in front of me.
yeah. I remember it now, thanks.
Could there be a waiver for these students to bring in one of their own personal devices and be left in the classroom?
I believe the language in the state law prevents that.
I'm trying,
I'm sorry.
I'm trying.
There are certain limitations in terms of students bringing that in. And then the other limitation is the policing of who has what. We do have exceptions already for students with medical needs, especially like with cell phones to monitor diabetic conditions. We also have exceptions for students with disabilities that may need to have a certain type of personal device that's not necessarily provided by the school.
I just find it difficult to sit here and not be able to come up with a way to help some of our brightest students get the work done that they need to get done. It's frustrating. Anything else from you, Andrew?
That's it?
Okay. Thank you very much. As Kevin said, you're well researched, and we thank you for all the information you're bringing back to us. Next is our policy committee report, and that's Trustee Monroe.
Okay, the policy committee met last week, January 13th. In attendance was Joyce, Tim, Mr. Burke, and myself. We reviewed a number of 5,000 level policies. The first one being 5650, which is energy, water conservation, and recycling of solid waste. This was a review-only policy. Mr. Burke reviewed it with Mr. Tessier as well, our Director of Facilities. And there were no Erie 1 recommendations on this, and it's currently a active policy, so no change. Review was good there. Policy 5651, which is energy management conservation. The policy committee does recommend to rescind it because most of the language in it is no longer pertains to an active policy. A lot of the language and the action items aren't current practice, and most of the language has already been updated through the state education department as part of their requirements. Policy 5740, the use of buses by community groups. That was reviewed. There's no updates there, as well as policy 6530, payroll deductions, again reviewed with no updates. Policy number 7121, diagnostic screening of students. Policy committee recommends to rescind this policy. It is not a relevant practice of how the district currently operates. There's no diagnostic requirements for students incoming, and we review through our own other approach. So we do recommend working with Mrs. Chapman to sort of rewrite this policy that follows our actual operations when it comes to the diagnostic of screening students. So the policy committee is going to be working on that and provide basically a rewrite of that policy that's more current. Policy 7310, Student Code of Conduct and Discipline. Some small updates to page 11 in the language where it quotes revisions to personal internet-enabled device. That's in the second paragraph, and that matches with the new New York State law and current practice. And then we recommend removing the COVID language, which is on page 15, line F. Policy 7450, video and tape records of conferences, lessons, and meetings. That was reviewed. There are no updates recommended to that policy. And then last month, Joyce had recommended through the NISBA conference that we review our AI, artificial intelligence policy every 6 months. So we did review that again. Mr. Burke looked, and there were no updates from Erie 1, and we've had some active discussion about how quickly it's changing. So the policy committee will continue to just keep an eye on that and bring it to the forefront of discussion if we see any major changes or hear from Erie 1. And then we got into some additional discussion about policies that weren't on our agenda, and it's actually not a policy per se, but we do have, if you're not aware, we have an athletic code of conduct. And so the policy committee recommend that we actually look into the athletic code of conduct, as it's not a part of our current district policy. And we recommend reviewing this with the AD, the high school principal, next month to really review that code of conduct and ask any questions and see if there's any recommendations from anybody on the policy committee, with the potential to bring this back for a full board review. And I think some of the ideas that there is a lot of language in there, and while we do have a student code of conduct, the athletic code of conduct language is listed a little bit differently, and we felt that we should really look at bringing this under the policy of the district as well. So that's kind of the current state of affairs in policy and what we're working and reviewing right now. So we'll have more updates next month after we get a chance to ask questions and recommendations. Any questions? Kevin?
Yeah, and with regard to the athletic code of conduct, in respect to the district's code of conduct, I almost wonder if you're going to want to spread that out and call it an extracurricular code of conduct, because people in musicals and all the rest of those things are left out of that oversight and overarching responsibility to follow a certain set of guidelines. And I'm not saying they're not responsible people, but the athletics seems to be picked out and not picked on, but very specified, and there's specific penalties for loss of games and participation and whatnot, and it carries over from year to year, and I guess the other extracurriculars have been left out of that. So if we're going to have it specified for that, why wouldn't we spread it out to all those types of things?
Yeah.
Kevin, we did talk about that, and it makes sense. One thing we discussed was what becomes extracurricular. Are we talking about Spanish club? Are we talking about chess club? You know, where do we draw the line on what's an extracurricular that we would include in that? Which becomes a little difficult when you do that. I think it needs to be included. Just where do we draw the line?
So I think in some regards you would consider, so an athlete, maybe the higher level concern of an athlete is that they're wearing a uniform and representing the school. So wouldn't music or the musical or things like that be the same thing? I don't know that Spanish Club is out representing the school in the public.
Okay.
I don't know the specific things that they do, but the presentation and the level of the presentation. Okay. I'm not out to minimize any one or maximize another one.
That's a good answer.
But that's a way to look at it under that kind of umbrella. I did have another question about the code of conduct. When's the right time to get into that?
Anytime.
Okay.
You'll have another bite at the apple
Oh, you know I love some of this stuff. There's I think it's under engage in any conduct that endangers the safety of morals, health, or welfare of others. I think it goes over to page 14. And under number 4, it says discrimination based on a person's actual or perceived race, age, sexual orientation, use of a recognized guide dog, hearing dog or service dog, color, creed, national origin, ethnic group, religion, religious practice, sex, sexual orientation, gender, gender identity, marital, veteran status, use of a recognized guide dog, hearing dog or service dog, or disability as a basis for treating another in a negative manner on school property or at a school function. So one of the things that I was heavily involved with in the past, and I get very concerned about, is dogs on the school grounds. We went through exhaustive processes for establishment of very specified criteria for a therapy dog to be in the schools. We took into account everyone that's in the school, including those that don't like or have an aversion to dogs. So I looked through the policies. I can't find any policy that talks about service dogs. I don't know, we don't have any guidance that tells us what the metric is for any given dog's classification with reference to that policy. There's no definition that tells me what a service dog is, and not to diminish someone's service dog or importance to that person, but maybe they could order a service dog vest at Walmart and then, or off the internet, and walk into school with it and say, that's my service dog. What are the criteria that we use to define such?
Since we don't have any, I'm going to presume that our criteria would be that it would have to be a medical report or a medical note from a qualified physician. It's really easy. Somebody who's visually impaired, that's easy. That's a service dog.
Yeah.
It could also be somebody who suffers with seizure disorder, because there are dogs that are trained to help with that. And
Yep.
again, that would come from a bona fide healthcare provider. And then anything else. I mean, this is one of those sticky conversations in public, because if I say the next part, I'll probably have 5 or 6 notes come Monday morning from a physician who says my child or a child needs one for emotional support.
Well, I mean,
And that could go there, but typically when we talk about service dogs, it would have to be something that would fall under the ADA.
yeah, and again, a school is sort of to be a kind of neutral environment, and I've always been averse to dogs being in schools. I just am. I go to the grocery store. I love dogs, and I have had them for a long time, but I don't need to see everybody's dog in the store. And if you do, it's up to you. It's fine. But people also have a right to their privacy from animals in schools. So I'm also trying to represent that side, because most of what that policy does is protect those that are marginalized. So I'm just trying to represent them. And as Forrest Gump would say, that's all I got to say about that.
Do you see a solution as a specific individual policy for service dogs, I mean?
That's what I would ask, is how would anyone at the front door, when one tries to walk in, know how to judge any given four-legged critter that someone's trying to get in? We don't have any basis whatsoever. So the fact that that's spelled out in that policy is a gaping hole to me, that no one is qualified to answer that question, because we have nothing to go on. We have no training. I know that, and again, I understand, there was anyone who was on the policy committee with me, when we went through the therapy dogs, will know that you went through the Kevin grinder. And because I want to represent the whole thing, and I want to be very specific, and it's great, but you also have to represent those that don't like it. So I want to be very clear with that. It was very confusing when I read that to me, and it brought about a very visceral response that you're hearing now. So,
should any dog that come on a property be known by the property? Should they be documented that this dog is known? If it's the first time that the dog
There's
comes.
one policy on animals, it's 8214, I read it this morning.
And
It does not discuss service dogs. It starts to get into some of that. But
If it's always the same dog, it's documented. But if there's a new dog that comes on the property, we should have a document supporting that this one is qualified to be on the property with schools, with students.
So when the language talks about it being the use of a recognized guide dog, I think that's the term right there, the recognized, that it has to be
Yes.
approved
Yes.
by a healthcare provider. And I do want to also be a little bit careful because, and some of you have heard me talk about this, and we talked about it with some of our capital project with my wanting to put a fence around part portion of Nightingale, right? We go into a real, again, use the same word again, a real sticky situation. We start talking about dogs on campus when we have the John Story Trail, which is used really 24/7, and the number of dogs that we have, mostly on leashes, not always. We have no control of those dogs that are out there either. So, but I hear what Kevin's saying. Kevin, I can reach back out to our attorney to see if there's anything that she can come up with. Again, there's no Erie update on this. As of, is there something? Sorry.
Is there policies on, I don't know, dog qualifications, or does this board have to determine that? Somebody must have some guidelines at other schools. Of course, I say that with caution because I'd take a more conservative stance than others, so it's a board of 9 that makes the decision. So,
Let me look into see what is out there in terms of guide dogs, and it might be that term recognized. That's why I want to keep going back to, when you talk about a dog that is approved for the visually impaired, they have to go through all of that training. And I grew up with a friend whose family did that, and there's qualifications. So maybe it's that qualification. Maybe that's what we need to put there, is that it's recognized, meaning that it's been authorized by a healthcare provider, and that the dog meets the guidelines for whatever that condition is under some type of a national certification. Honestly, other than the visually impaired, I don't know what other certs are out there.
Not all dogs are service dogs.
Right.
So they need to be recognized and defined and beef up that definition. That's what we need to do.
And I also have to make sure that those are actually questions that we can ask John Q. Public, who's coming in for a musical. I mean, can I ask a community member, oh, okay, that's a service dog. Well, show me your doctor's note, you need it, and show me your dog's cert. And I don't know what the answer is, but let me check on those things with our attorney, because some of that might be that fine line. And Kevin, I agree with you. I don't like going into the grocery store anyway, and I don't like going into the grocery store seeing a dog. So,
that's just.
And I do also have dogs. But.
Yep, same.
Ron mentioned ADA, and there is a definition, so it could be as simple as looking at that definition and including it in our policy language or our code of conduct language.
I think we have a right to ask that question, given our responsibility to the public, to students and whatnot. So it would bother me immensely if for some reason we're not even allowed to ask the question. But there are things in this policy where things are that protected that you can't ask about it. So.
And that's what I want to just double check, that we're not,
which is
ending up violating
crazy
anyone's rights.
Whatever.
So that kind of brings up a question as to the whether we tonight adopt the student code of conduct policy it's up for first reading. Should we, when the time comes, should we pull that out and request that it go back to committee and maybe start over with the first reading next month?
Yeah, we could, yeah. Policy committee, Tim,
Yes, absolutely.
you good with that? Okay.
Can that be the only thing on our agenda? I mean, it's going to be huge.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So that's what we'll do, I think, when we get to our consent agenda. We'll pull that out and ask for a motion to table it.
Okay.
Zach, I have another question. So under rescind policies, energy management, conservation, why are we rescinding that policy?
Because the language in that policy, it doesn't pertain to the active practices. A lot of those have been updated in just other SED language and other policies. So what was in there is really kind of outdated language for things like, what had we discussed, Ron? like
Fra-
LED lights or
Yeah,
that type of
frankly,
thing? Yeah.
there's almost nothing in this policy that we do. It's a 20-year-old policy that has not been updated. So, for example, during the regular school workday, all appliances lighting be turned off when not needed. Is that a policy? That's a guidance. When you start putting the word should, particular attention. Again, this is something that's very generic. It's the first time I've ever seen one of these policies in any of my schools. Then you get down to C, thermostats should be set at 65 to 70 degrees. We now have guidance from NICED in terms of what the temperature should be. And if I try to set 70 degrees in classrooms, there will be a gaggle of people coming to our next board meeting to talk about how cold our building is. The other thing is, again, after hours, weekends, we have energy management systems that have taken over some of those roles. And I believe there's even something in here about a task force committee. Yes, an energy conservation task force that's supposed to be employed. Mr. Tessier assured me he has not seen one since he's been here. And I don't know that anyone else recalls one either. Maybe Kevin, there was one. So
I don't remember one.
It's just not one that we follow. And so much of this is already guided by the state. And I will be, here's the other thing. As we're going into our capital project, and it was the same with the last one, there are things that the state of New York requires with energy management, whether it be occupancy sensors in classrooms that don't work, but we put them in, and then until we get complaints, and then somehow they get fixed. There are other things that we have to do that we just, it's part of our capital project. It's outside the scope of really anything that a committee at the local level could come up with. So again, this is just when we looked at this, when Mr. Tessier was looking at it, I was hoping he was going to come back and say, yeah, we haven't been doing this, but we should, and his response was, we haven't, and I don't know how we would. Again, a lot of it's already directed by SED.
Okay.
There's a few things, and working backwards. For temperature, is there a like a maximum temperature? Like, because I feel that every year there's at least one classroom that's like 85 degrees.
The new law, 65 is the minimum.
Yeah.
And then you have 83 and then 88 is the new regs that trigger things if it's.
At the
and there's
center
a
of the
specific,
room, 30
it's
inches
got to be
above the
measured
floor.
30 or 3 feet. I think it's 3 feet in the center of the room. There are 3 accepted thermometers that can be used that are already specified. And then that temperature has to be taken, and at 83 degrees with the temperature taken, that means that triggers mitigated actions that, and I can't quote it exactly, but the school's got to take actions that you'd shut off the lights, you'd start to do things, you might open windows. If it hits 88 degrees, there's another set of actions. You might move out of the room. That was the newest regulations that came out that are going to force most places into air conditioning.
And the current language right now, with all of those mitigating factors, each one of those mitigating factors, the language was amended at the last minute in the legislation that says, to the extent practical.
Yeah.
What they were afraid of, I think, is that all of a sudden you're going to get to 88 degrees, you have no other place in your building to send the students, shut the school down, which means a loss of instructional day, typically at the end of the school year as people are getting ready for Regents exams. So some practicality came in. I'm glad that they gave us the idea of closing the shades to keep the sun out. I don't think we would have thought of that on our own. It's a good idea to turn down our lights, which are mostly, in our case, LED. So again, I'm glad that we're getting these practical ideas. But again, I think common sense prevails.
Yeah.
And, and I don't think there was anything in there, Kevin, about making sure that there's adequate water supply, which typically we also do on those really hot days. So it's
an
so there is that
interesting set of
minimum, there's that
rules.
max. And interestingly enough, there is a minimum temperature on buses, which is 55 degrees, but there is no maximum temperature on buses. So we have some things there. Same thing with working conditions. There is no maximum working condition temperature for folks that work in the cafeteria or who work out on our athletic fields in the
Kitchens
summer.
are exempt from that rule.
Kitchens are exempt as of now.
Yeah.
You know, so again, there's, the new law is a little bit peculiar.
Okay, next, the dog policy. I think you should consider like maybe ending it at a certain point of the day. So like keeping it from like say 7 to 5, because I know that for the musical last year there was a dog character, and that played a important role. That I remember when in 4th grade we had a musical, and I ran across the stage with a dog mask, which was interesting. So, but I think it should definitely be in consideration that there are other reasons that a dog could be on school property for valid reasons.
Sure.
And then for the athletic conduct, I was wondering what is the like kind of language that is different from the normal code of conduct, and why that would apply to extracurricular activities.
I'd ask the same question back at you. If the extracurricular activities, like say the musical, don't have any oversight like that, why does athletes have to have it?
Well, I would say that there are like normal code of conduct things that apply to all students. So I'm wondering, what are those extra things under the athletic code of conduct that are necessary for athletes?
There's grade, I think there's, I can't quote it specifically. Tim, you might know. There's grading. There's what? Yeah.
I can speak if you
Sure.
want.
Sure.
Yeah, obviously, there's a number of different things, Kevin, and you've touched on it. There's grading. There's a certain, grades that you have to have.
Yeah.
There's an athletic substance abuse policy. Those are the big ones. So for example, why it would be, if we don't include the musical, you could have a student go out and get busted by the police on a Friday night for having a party and drinking or being brought in for any offense, and that wouldn't preclude them from being in the musical. But it wouldn't let them run track the next day. I would say that would be probably some of the big things, but I think I applaud you. I think there's some good things that we should look at on the athletic code of conduct and and activities type of stuff.
Yeah, I would say if those are the things, like, you could just apply it across the board to extracurricular activities in general. No? Like, there should be a punishment for being caught with a substance. There should be a punishment for having failing grades, and maybe that punishment goes to all students that are taking advantage of these things, that to help encourage them to deal with their grades, I guess.
Yep.
One of the things I would just ask all the board members to think about as we enter into these conversations is the purpose of why we're here. And tonight we're going to be asking, to formally retroactively approve another coach for our track that we talked about at the last meetings. You're going to hear in the future about our wrestling program. We've added programs for elementary musicals. And we do all of these things for a reason. And having been a coach, an advisor, and a teacher, kids have to have a reason. And for as much as I want to think that they all came to class and to school every day because of my math class, that wasn't the case. The kids that were on my baseball team were more coming to my class and coming to school because of baseball at 3 o'clock. Yes, we need to have standards for participation, but we also, I would just ask, let's think about the value in placing barriers and what those barriers, how far those barriers should go. We have a student athlete, let's take for example, who may be failing 2 classes. If we say to that, in my first school, you fail 2 classes, you are done for 5 weeks. And 5 weeks is a season. That's insane. They couldn't come to practice until I broke the policy inadvertently or purposefully. And where do those kids go? They don't go to study hall. They don't go home and sit at the kitchen table with mom and do their homework. That doesn't work. We don't see these policies when they become barrier policies. They don't make improvements, generally speaking. Now, the discipline side, yeah. If I know I'm at a party, I'm going to get busted, and I'm not going to be able to play Saturday's game or in sectionals, that's an incentive. And maybe that's the type of thing, but I just want to be careful that we remember our purpose. And how do we keep our kids engaged? And when we look at the number of events that we're sponsoring now, our attendance, there's got to be correlation between the number of students that are participating and where our attendance rates are going. And they're generally increasing. So let's as we entertain these conversations, let's just be mindful of, okay, how do we make it better to more actively engage our students in productive education all around. And, sometimes you have a student who's failing 2 classes, but because of sports, they're not failing 5. And if you have a real hard line there, folks, we could miss some kids. We could actually be forcing some to drop out. I really want to keep figuring out how to get, I'm not happy right now that every student isn't participating in at least one activity. That should be our ultimate goal. Every 7 through 12 students should be engaged in something at school, whether it be a sporting event, a musical, or an art event, whatever it might be. That should be our goal here, is how do we entice every one of our kiddos to get involved, be present. And I just want to be careful. Again, standards, please, absolutely, I support it, but not barriers. And I just want to say that because I want you to go home, think about this for the next month when we come back and have more of these conversations. How do we get our kids here, and how do we keep them engaged?
Well, part of the policy used to be if you were failing 2 classes, you got assigned activity period with the teachers whose classes that you were failing, and it went on a rotation basis so that they would get the support to help get their grades up, and the teacher was very specific about you have to make up this homework, or you have to do this, or you have to retake this, or whatever it was. But then when the busing issue became a bigger thing and activity periods were canceled sometimes, how do you do that? So I agree that I don't think it should just be a hard, you're failing so you're sitting out, but there's got to be some kind of support net, because obviously the student needs that help.
And that's exactly, and I think this board, previous boards have done an outstanding job with your code of conduct, because it really currently does address, can it always be tweaked and made better? Absolutely. But really, those supports are there, and it's not an all or nothing. And, I've seen Mr. Reagan working with student athletes on whether it be discipline issues or whether it be academics, and trying to come up with very viable solutions that help that child grow and still remain engaged. And that's the other part. We want to always be careful that we don't ever create a policy that says A leads to B, and that's it. There has to always be some judgment call. There has to be, and there can always be cries, oh, well, this student got favoritism. I'll take that risk, as long as we have that ability to be looking at each child uniquely and saying, okay, yeah, you're failing 2 classes, but golly, you should probably be failing 5. Or you're failing 1, you shouldn't be failing any.
I agree with you, and some of the lessons learned to the commitment of the student signing that code of conduct, I believe they have to sign off on that. So you've signed a contract that this is what I will do and this is what I shouldn't do. So some of it is the learning of a life lesson of consequences.
That's right.
And I don't want to overlook that. I'm not trying to make that the most important part of that. It's not my focus. I agree with your focus, but there's got to be consequences of some sort.
Yep,
And,
and
and
we
ways
do.
to dig yourself out, of messes, but.
That's why I think the language when we get into
Yeah.
this is going to be really important, because I know Ron gave us a good example there, but our coaches and our club advisors, they're all mentors after school, beyond just teaching during the school day. And so knowing that they're there, but also if we really think about incentive, right? There's nothing worse than being an athlete and still being held to the standard of having to be physically there, whether you can participate or not, than not being active at all. So if there's going to be any sort of drive or incentive or motivation to get your grades up or to avoid any type of illicit behavior again, it's going to be watching it in front of your eyes, right? And seeing it. There's nothing worse than being an athlete and maybe practicing and knowing that you're working hard and not being able to play in the game that weekend because of your grades or whatever happened from the discipline side of it. So part of, I think, what Ron's getting at too is that, yeah, there's got to be that standard of discipline, but also there's that layer of mentorship, positive adult modeling, and then also the drive for incentive. So it's going to be a combination, and that's why we brought it into discussion. That's why it became part of the policy committee's idea to really look at absorbing that into the policy, as well as not just athletics, again, extracurriculars, as we discussed as well. So looping that all in is kind of relates back to all those incentives.
I think Ron said it well.
Yeah.
Standards, not barriers. That says it all.
Also, just wanted to ask Gavin, so you had started a new kind of mentoring process with your student athletes who were the captains of the team.
Yeah.
And if you could just talk a little bit about that, like, do you think that maybe when we're talking about athletic code of conduct, that maybe that could also be something where they're involved in making sure that all the members of the team are eligible and doing what they need to be doing?
I mean, I think it's always good to get your input from your athletes, right, on a number of, subjects. I would, don't want to overburden them because they've got a lot going on too. So that's, why they have people like me to lean on. But I think it's more of an educational piece, right? Let them know the ramifications. Hopefully it doesn't have to be a hard lesson, as Kevin said, but just to keep them aware of, hey, you've got choices, and if you make bad choices, there's going to be consequences. So I think and what happens too is there's more of, when you have good teams, it's more help within, right? Hey, we're going to make sure that Johnny or Susie doesn't do things that it's going to be adverse to them and to our team. So more of a group approach. But yeah, I mean, I always try to engage them and talk to the captains and say, hey, how are your teams going? How do you feel about this or that? Are there any issues that I should know about, to try to head them off before and just to be a little bit more proactive on it. But yeah.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments on the policy committee report? Hardest working committee ever.
Oh, I just had a thought. I was thinking about it, and I would say that in general, like, athletes are more common to care about their sport than school. I find that some activities students might think of as secondary. Like, I know that a lot of students that go into musical value it very highly, but a lot of times they also really care about the school and like their grades, so they're not really in the group that would be caught failing a class or two. So there is always that consideration when you're thinking of like how far you might want to push.
Okay, if there are no other questions or comments about policy, we'll move on to my report, which is very short. We have a couple of legislative outreach opportunities that are coming up. The NYSBA Area 6 Legislative Breakfast is February 13th. Details are linked on your agenda. That is in Lake Placid. At this point, Mr. Burke, Mrs. Murphy, and myself will be attending. and there's room for more if you get your request to come along to Ashley. She should be able to get you registered for that tomorrow. We're expecting Senator Steck, Assemblyman Cashman from Plattsburgh, and Assemblyman Simpson, who's from Queensbury, to be attending that. And on February 27th, the St. Lawrence Lewis School Boards Association will be having their legislative gathering at the BOCES in Canton. And I think that's at 11 o'clock. Senator Steck, Assemblyman Gray, and Senator Walczak will be in attendance there, we believe. And are they asking for like pre-registrations or anything for that, or just show up? Okay, let Ashley know if you'd like to attend that as well. And that's all I have. Moving on to reports from administration and Mr. Burke.
So I'd like to ask Mr. Reagan to come forward again and to speak more generally about the athletic department.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank Ron and the board here for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. My name's Gavin Reagan. I'm the athletic director here at Massena Central, and I've been the school's athletic director since September of 2016. There's just 3 points I'd like to talk briefly about tonight. Some of my primary duties here at Massena Central, our athletic teams, and lastly, why it's important for our students to participate in athletics. My primary responsibilities, I have a number of them. I administer all aspects of the athletic program. I have developed long and short-term plans to improve our athletic program. I also oversee all budgeting and purchasing for the athletic department. I interview, hire, and recommend the appointments of all coaches and conduct their evaluations. We have 50 paid head coaches here at Massena, 7 paid assistant coaches, and over 40 volunteer coaches. I also schedule all athletic contests at home and away, and I am also responsible for carrying out those events along with site supervision. I schedule all transportation in regards to away contests. I represent the school at league, section, and state meetings. We provide leadership training for our athletes here at school and in conjunction with Section 10. I ascertain the district, Section 10, and NISVA rules and regulations and make sure they're followed. I compile and distribute team rosters, oversee the disbursement and collection of athletic equipment. I maintain an adequate inventory of equipment, uniforms, and supplies. I oversee all of our athletic registration. When I got here in 2016, it was done by paper. We have converted that to an online version. I arrange necessary physical exams for athletes through our school head nurse and Rochester Regional. I coordinate with our school nurse any accident reports pertaining to our athletes. I organize and coordinate any play days we might have with the elementary schools. I maintain the school's website pertaining to athletics, in particular athletics scheduling and rosters. And we're glad to say we're probably going to be launching a new site by the end of the month. I oversee all athletic impact testing. I oversee our athletic code of conduct. I oversee any athletic discipline and attend superintendent hearings as needed. I oversee all building use here at Massena Central, and that's a duty that was delegated to me after complaining to Pat Brady that the system was antiquated and did not work correctly. That also was done by paper, and now it's done online. I'm also a liaison to the Massena Central Athletic Hall of Fame, and I'm also the president of the New York State Public High School Athletic Association Foundation. Next, just a little bit about our teams. We have 50 teams here at Massena Central, and we are hoping to add another one next year, being girls wrestling. They are a club team right now. The breakdown is we have 19 teams that compete in the fall, 16 teams compete in the winter, and 15 teams compete in the spring. Massena Central School has the largest number of teams competing in all of Section 10. During any one season, we have between 370 and 385 athletes participating. That's also the largest number in Section 10. We have increased participation by over 15% in the last 10 years. A number of schools in Section 10 have seen their athletic numbers decrease. Why have our numbers increased? Basically, the support that I've had over the years from our administration and our board. We have added new teams since I started. We have added, 7 new teams since I've started. Boys cross country at the modified and varsity level. Girls cross country at the modified and varsity level. JV volleyball, boys modified track, girls modified track, and we also brought back boys modified indoor track and girls modified indoor track. Now, just a quick look at why it's important for our students to be athletes. Ron touched on this, and I couldn't have asked for a better intro. Key findings on academic performance. GPA and grades. Athletes tend to have a higher GPA. One study has found that 80.1% of athletes have a B or higher average, compared to 74.5% of non-athletes. Another analyst has said that 88% of varsity athletes maintain a B or higher average. Academic achievements. Athletes often show significant higher percentages in math, science, and English. Dropout rate. Student athletes have a significant lower risk of dropping out, 35% compared to 52.3% of non-athletes. Gender and demographics. Female athletes often had higher GPAs than male athletes, but both groups have outperformed non-athletes. Behavioral factors. The structure of sports has led to better attendance, less discipline issues with athletes, and fewer suspensions. Factors influencing success of our athletes. Time management. Athletes must learn to manage their time effectively, balancing practice, games, and schoolwork. Support system. Teammates and coaches provide encouragement and accountability, contributing to higher academic focus. Eligibility requirements. Many schools maintain the minimum GPA to participate, which can act as an incentive for athletes to maintain their grades. All of these are true here at Massena Central and our athletic program. I took a dive into our senior class this year. Out of the top 6 academic students in the senior class, 5 of them are athletes. That's a testament to our school, our coaches, and the support that I have from this group. Lastly, I've never had the opportunity to publicly say this, but I owe gratitude to Tim Hayes. Tim ran a wonderful program in Massena Central for years, and my first 2 years, he really helped me a lot and set the foundation for where we are right now. So I'd publicly like to thank Tim. If there are any questions anybody have, I try to entertain and give you an answer. If I don't have an answer, I'll follow up with you.
Thanks, Gabby. Yeah, I did have a quick question, it's kind of specific, but what does the conversation look like among Section 10 athletic directors right now in regards to girls football, as it seems to be growing in popularity?
So girls flag football, yes, has seen a lot of popularity outside Section 10. The concern that they've had in Section 10, it is a spring sport, and we haven't seen a large calling for it in the section of saying they want to play. And what we're seeing is, I'm sure we would get athletes that would play. We don't have a big enough base of female athletes. It probably might be the detriment of some of the other teams. It'd probably be just a shifting, because we've done some conversation internally in the school. Some athletes might say, hey, I might not play softball or track and move over to flag football. And that's basically what has been the thought process around Section 10. I hope that answered it for you.
Yeah, thank you.
in the same vein, what about men's volleyball? Is there demand for that?
Unfortunately, no. I mean, nobody in Section 10, there has not been. It just hasn't been because the large number of athletes, and it's a fall sport here in Section 10, and a large number of the male athletes have been doing either cross-country, soccer, or football, and there just hasn't been a big ask for it.
What about swimming for men?
Same thing in
No
Section
demand.
Same thing in Section 10. It's unfortunate. The only one in Section 10 that has it is Governor, and they actually don't swim in Governor. They're in a league in the Frontier League. They don't swim in Section 10.
Is there talks about tennis or pickleball?
Not at this point. There has not been.
Gavin, have you looked into the trap shooting that they were interested in? I know Rod and Gun Club talked about it. I wondered where we're at with that.
Yeah, we had a little bit of a discussion that at our finance committee tonight. Yeah, so Ron and I met with the gentleman at the Rod and Gun Club. What most schools do, Timmy, is they have the Rod and Gun Club themselves run the trap, and the reason being is the guns that are used. Okay, these are live rounds and live guns, and obviously the athletes can't transport them here to school and then bring them to the Rod and Gun Club. And because of their own weapons or guns, the Rod and Gun Club is kind of shying away from having them house them there too. So it's been a tough situation of how they're going to get them. So what the Rod and Gun Clubs have done in other areas is they have run it, and the parents transport the athletes to the Rod and Gun Club, and the gun club, runs the trap shooting. Definitely not opposed to them. I said I would be more than happy to try to help them get athletes to do that. Also, in another vein, anything that's ever come to our athletic department, two things. It's basically been athlete driven. I haven't had one athlete even on our rifle team say, hey, I want to start a trap team. And secondly is anybody that wants to come before us, it has to go as a club first, and it has to be sponsored outside and paid for outside, as you know. So if the Rod and Gun Club wants to do it, more than happy, and we'd push athletes that way.
Is it right that one of the bonuses of running the trap team would be it's not part of New York State Public High School, so somebody on the football team or soccer team, they can shoot at different times and still be involved in that program?
100%.
Okay, I just think it's a good program to be looking into. When I went to Perryshville after I was here, we started one there, and it engages some kids that aren't involved in anything else, and it gives kids an opportunity that are involved in sports here that have an interest in that to still be involved even though they're involved in the sport already. So just what I'm thinking. I think it's a great program.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
Do we turn down students of certain sports? Is there a lot of sports where we turn down students? And do we consider B teams like another team that would practice and maybe not play as much? But
I'm not sure if I understand what you mean by turning down.
is there sports where there's such a big demand? Yeah, cuts. Do we, like those students, even if they're not as athletic as the leaders or the better ones, can they still practice a sport in a certain environment with coach and support with a facility?
So cross-section 10, there's no B teams. And not saying that we couldn't do that, but cross-section 10, there's no B teams. Then you're going to run into the expense and the number of coaches that you're going to have regarding, the size of your teams. Then you're going to have to decide if there's nobody for them to play outside, how are they going to get into games, internally? At the varsity, if it was at the modified level, for example, at the modified level, it's easy for us in basketball. Let's take boys basketball. We didn't have to do cuts, and we kept two teams because a lot of schools at the modified level will have two teams. No school has two teams at JVs. No school has two teams at varsity. So it's going to be tough for me to get those athletes in games at the varsity level.
Is there sports that are more popular where we have bigger cuts? And do we do something, like do we encourage the students to do something else? Is there another offer for them?
So what happens is we regularly, for example, our larger numbers would be in soccer, for example, in the fall. I regularly have athletes that might be at the modified level, could conceivably be, because that's our largest groups. If they get cut from our team, a lot of them will go into like cross country. So yeah, and actually we'll count their practices, some of their practices for their cross country practices, so they'll be right up to speed. So yeah, we totally encourage our athletes, hey, because athletes develop differently, right? So we encourage our athletes, if they don't make a particular team, hey, they're more than welcome to go at other teams. And we've also taken it to the extent if a team where there's no cuts, we've even let athletes register late so they could be able to join that team.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Gavin, do you want to talk a little bit about the opportunities that you've given for the athletes who are, oh, I'm brain cramping right here. You know, the top two people. No, like in your athletics, who would be
Male and female athletes,
no.
All Northerns? I don't know. You're saying top
the
two?
captains and the co-captains of the team that you've been regularly meeting
Yeah.
with them.
So we've taken our athletes to, like Clarkson, for example, to do some training with a number of athletes from across Section 10. They interact with them. We've got another one that's going to be coming up in March. And what I've done is I think we took 9 athletes in the fall, and we're going to take another 9 or 10 athletes, just a cross section. I'll reach out to our coaches and say, hey, who are your captains, or who do you think potentially will be a captain next year? Like sometimes we'll do juniors and seniors, and sometimes we'll say, hey, this athletes, let's get a bunch of sophomores to go. So we have real formal training that we do a couple of times, and it's more on leadership training, what the expectations are of a captain, what you should look for if an athlete's struggling. It's a pretty rigorous program that they go to a bunch of different groups, and it's professionally done, and it's done at Clarkson. So it's a great opportunity for them. And then what we do is when I meet with them on a regular basis, we kind of get their input and try to reinforce some of those things, because the best information I can get from our athletes are right from our captains and our athletes themselves, especially if somebody's struggling. We also put for Section 10, and I don't know if everybody saw it, last fall, with Chad Simpson, we had a number of our different captains, and they did a PSA on mental health, and it went out to the section. Our school did it and went out to the section. So just some different things like that we do. But thank you.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you.
Okay. That's good. Thank you, and I appreciate everybody's support here.
Thank you, Gavin.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. My next item is a recommendation that the board authorize a donation of used books to Massena Public Library. These books were from a retired teacher's classroom, her library of books offered to all the other schools, and these are the ones that remain, and the library does have interest in taking those. The next is a recommendation that we donate 5 obsolete AEDs to the Massena Fire Department. They will use those for training purposes for heart saver, CPR, AED use. Next recommendation is to donate cheerleading mats. I believe it was about a year and a half ago we purchased new cheerleading mats, and these are the obsolete ones. And Section 10 has an interest in taking those off our hands, so that'll get them out of our storage, which is the hallway. Also declaring obsolete a number of items that are used for hearing and visual testing in the nurse's office. These are obsolete, not available to they've all been replaced at this point, and they're really only good for parts. Recommending that the board approve the 2026-27 school calendar, as I had indicated in my notes. We work backwards. The calendar committee works backwards from the last day of Regents exams and fits in 180 days before September 1st, generally speaking, working around some of the new holidays, that type of thing. So this has passed the muster of the regional calendar committee. The 18 superintendents have all agreed to take this calendar as it exists back to the board. Some of the school boards, some of the superintendents have made some tweaks where they're allowed to have conference days in August as opposed to just waiting until September. That gives them an extra snow day here or there. We're fine. We're comfortable with the 185. So. And then the final thing I had touched on a little bit earlier, although the board did agree with hiring an additional winter track coach, we do need to authorize that and formalize that with the MFT. So this is a one-year MOA for the remainder of this school year that we would have that additional coach. I'm hoping I come back to you next year with a similar MOA. Those are all of my items.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Burke. We'll move on now to recommended actions, and first up is our consent agenda. I'll start by asking if any board members have any items that they would like to see removed from the consent agenda for further discussion.
7310.
Okay. What would you like to have done?
That's the student code of conduct
Right.
and discipline. That's going back to policy, correct?
Correct, yep.
So
Yep.
would we,
So I think what we need to do is we need to pull it out, consider it separately, and ask for a table,
okay?
right? Okay. Any other policies to pull, or items to pull out of the consent agenda for discussion? Okay, hearing no other items, I would ask for a motion for approval of the consent agenda minus policy, the first reading of policy 7310, Student Code of Conduct and Discipline.
So moved.
Second.
I just comment. Yeah, just want to make sure the payroll deduction policy is 6350. Is that correct? Because I heard 6530 earlier. Just want to make sure we have the right number. It is 6350.
6530, when you click on the policy, it's listed as 6530. Wait, let me blow it up.
It is a typo. It should read
Yeah,
my policy
6530.
6530.
Okay.
I don't think we need to do anything with that. We'll just make note of that and change the number. So we have a motion and a second. Any more comments? All in favor on the consent agenda? Any opposed? That carries. We'll move on now to other items for action, and let's start right out with the first reading of policy 7310, Student Code of Conduct and Discipline. Do I have a recommendation?
So moved.
To do what?
To remove 7310.
Table it.
Table it.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to table policy 7310 for its first reading and take it back to the policy committee. Any comments or questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that carries. Next is the approval of the book donation to the Massena Public Library.
So move.
Second.
Any comments or questions? What kinds of books are these?
They came from a classroom library. They're mostly novels that were in a classroom for students to read. They've been read
So they're
for,
not little kid books,
No.
they're young adult, perhaps? Okay.
yeah, more grade 4, 5, 6 level.
Okay.
Used for many years, and we're happy that the library can take them.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All in favor of that donation? Any opposed? That carries. Approval of the AED donation to Massena Fire Department.
So move.
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed? And the approval of the disposal of the surplus cheerleading mats.
So move.
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor? And next, disposal of the hearing and vision testing equipment.
So move.
Second.
Questions? All in favor? Okay, that passes. Next is the approval of the 26-27 school calendar.
So move.
Second.
Any questions or comments? Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Approval of the MOA with the Massena Federation of Teachers for the winter track coach.
So move.
Second.
Questions, comments? All in favor? Opposed? And lastly, the approval of personnel action items. Mr. Burke.
I would recommend that the board authorize or approve the recommended personnel actions listed as numbers 1 through 24, and in particular, I would like to highly recommend numbers 23 and 24, Ms. Taylor Bond and Mr. Matthew Snyder for tenure. They will show up at our tenure reception later in the spring.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any questions or comments? All in favor? Opposed? That carries. That concludes our business on the agenda, except for items of new business. Does anyone on the board have any items they would like on a future agenda?
I do. So it's come to my attention that this year at the Central New York Scholastic Art Awards that we had several gold key, silver key, and honorable mentions. I'd like to request that we have the art department chairperson come and present with the winners, and maybe have certificates like we did with the girls volleyball team, and acknowledge them and invite their parents. I think that it would be a really great thing. That department is just really on fire. Those three people are super dynamic. They have so many kids involved. We were talking about extracurricular and how important that is. They have so many kids involved in all sorts of extracurricular. The reception for the open show, which is Massena Central High School students and local artists, adult artists, are exhibiting at the library, and the opening is Saturday at 11 o'clock, I believe, 11 o'clock, and the awards are 11:30. Several of the pieces that were not recognized at the Scholastic Art Show are there. It doesn't mean that they're inferior in any way. It's just judges tend to look for certain things, and that might not have been theirs, but these are really high caliber. And the unique thing about this show is the students judge the adult artwork and the adults judge the student artwork. And so it's written, so there's critique feedback for both groups, which I think is really healthy, and it helps the whole community. So I would invite anybody to attend that. There are light refreshments, and I'm really impressed by what's going on in the art department. I love to see that Massena is such a supportive place for the arts.
Any other items for future agendas?
Yes. It might not be an item for a further agenda. Maybe it's a question or a bit of a discussion. As Andrew pointed out, and we've heard, the IB program is going to go away and migrate into some other program. So I'm not sure if everyone's aware, but there's been a practice at Massena of grading IB at a higher rate, more than 100 points, that every other student is every other curriculum in the school is graded on a 100-point scale, I believe. I could be wrong, but so IB has been separated somewhere down the line and offered more points based on a criteria of rigor or whatever. I suspect it had to do with, historically, if you go back, it probably had to do with who got selected as the valedictorian. And what I'm curious about is, well, it bothers me on many fronts. That whole system bothers me immensely. Again, it's almost visceral because what I see that as is not a highlight of the rigor of IB, but I see that as also a marginalization of the other curricular programs. So it might have seemed good on, and anyone can have their own opinion. I don't like it. I never did. I never knew about it until I've been on the board 17 years. I think Tim told me 2 years ago about it. I never was aware of it. So anyway, what I'm curious about is, will that end when the IB program goes away? Or will this be morphed into some other adult-driven system that gets the adults what they want?
Kevin, let me come back to you on that one in February. I want to double check. I believe it's a policy perhaps in terms of grading. I'm not sure if it's just a high school practice as opposed to something that may have been approved. Let me get some more information on it, and I can get all that to the board out before before our February meeting. You can take a look at.
I don't believe that's on. I'll know tomorrow if that's in policy because I'll look tonight, but I don't think it is.
And I'm just not prepared to answer
Yeah,
that, and I
yeah,
don't know
fair
exactly
enough.
how that's going to roll.
Fair enough.
And I'd just like to add, I'm pretty sure that other schools do the same thing with AP, and that it's a weighted grade. If you're going to research it, I'd just like to know, are there other area schools that also weight the grades of AP courses? Because as Kevin said, that'll be something going forward.
Yeah, and go ahead, sorry, Trish.
Yep.
It's common with AP. I'm not going to say everywhere because I haven't researched it, and I can't say everywhere, but I will say it's common, and it's all over. Just
why didn't they just lower everyone else's grade by a certain percentage and leave it at a 100-point cap, just like the rest of us that grew up in the real world?
Yeah.
I will say there's other ways like schools do it. Like I know of a handful of schools that will weight it in terms of 5.0 instead of 4.0. But I believe the way we do it at Massena is it makes it easier to determine valedictorian and salutatorian, and it encourages those students to take on more rigor.
So I'm going to stop you for 1 second. I apologize for this. But the determination of valedictorian and salutatorian is merely a grade point average. A grade point average is a grade point average. If it's 100 points, it's 100 points. Then maybe you go to what's the difficulty? Did we have that many 100s? People getting a 100 average that we needed to go beyond that?
I would argue that a lot of classes that students may take their junior and senior year may be considerably easier to get a 100. Mm-hmm. And those classes would be weighted the same as, say, taking IB Bio HL.
Yep.
And I would think that that would be ever so slightly unfair to the student that is trying to go for that #1 grade point average, but also wanting to take on as much rigor as they can.
I agree with Andrew.
I just
on
got
that.
I'm sorry.
And the other real stick with all this is that for these kids taking these classes, these courses with multipliers, they reach a point where they have to, they can reach a point where they start cutting some elective courses because a 100 in an elective course will drag their 100% in the arts. An arts-based course can pull their grade point average down. And so I don't know what our practice is here with that, if there's opportunities for pass-fail or what all goes on now, but that is a problem. I think that instances like that have
So maybe we need
they've really hurt some programs.
So maybe we need a different criteria for selection of valedictorian beyond grade point average.
Well, too, Kevin,
I agree with that.
There's something, and maybe you can address this too, Andrew. There's something to that because when I was talking to the department chair in art, he was very excited that IB was going away because he would be able to offer more AP courses in the arts. And what I'm hoping will happen, this is just me, is that more teachers will want to offer an AP course because they can basically write their curriculum. I think there's a few steps that they have to go through to make sure that it meets the rigor of AP, but that with a smaller staff, we can offer more advanced courses. So Kevin, let's say like math isn't a kid's thing, but they're really, really good in social studies. They have like that memory that's great for dates and things like that. They could take an AP course in history, and then that would have a multiplier, and that would actually help their GPA. I mean, this is all in theory, but I'm hopeful that that's what happens, is that more teachers want to participate in the AP program than we're able to in the IB program because of certification, and that we had to send them away for training, and that it took several years for them to get certified. I'm just hopeful that this will kind of supplement that.
So in doing all this, are we eliminating all possibilities of somebody going to BOCES to be valedictorian or salutatorian? Because they get nothing bonus. They can take a, automotive one that's very tough that some people here in IB wouldn't be able to do. Are they automatically eliminated from the opportunity to be valedictorian because they don't get any bonus points and be able to get above 100? So by doing this, are we automatically eliminating any opportunity for a BOCES student to become valedictorian?
It would be much easier if we just made a broad brush statement that IB can, or that the valedictorian and salutatorian can only come from IB. Then it levels the system and there's no expectation.
I think it would be better to say that the valedictorian and salutatorian has to come from like the school, because you can't be valedictorian or salutatorian if you go to like Clarkson for the year and you
Can you if you go to BOCES?
No. Well,
why not?
No, you can't.
We don't offer those programs here. I mean, anybody that goes to BOCES should have the opportunity.
They've been ruled out because of the weighted grade.
Yeah, when you
And
have
I don't think there's very
valedictorian-
many teachers at BOCES who give it 100 anyway.
When you have valedictorian that has a 101 average.
You eliminate anybody from BOCES.
Yeah. And I'm not.
I don't like it.
It doesn't just do that. It eliminates anyone who isn't taking courses with the multiplier. If you don't have the multiplier, if you don't have some courses with the multiplier, it's impossible to get a grade point average over 100%, and the Val and Sal typically do. And the top, I don't know, 10, 15, I'm just guessing.
So why don't we just say
not just
then,
those,
based on
it's
that,
not just those two.
why don't we just say, if you're not taking classes with multipliers, you don't have an opportunity to be that? I mean, that's what it turns out to. If you're not taking classes with a multiplier, your chances of being valedictorian or salutatorian are eliminated.
And as I've gotten older, I learn new things all the time, and I become aware of things all the time that weren't normal to my time of when I grew up. And it's all the time with the woke world and whatever. It's a constant evolution of learning new things, but it's interesting, I guess, because I just never assumed that everyone wasn't going on a 100-point scale. I didn't realize that, and I kind of felt foolish as a board member never really hearing that. I started to wonder the first time I was at a board meeting and I heard that a student had more than 100 average. I started going, well, I don't know whose calculator they were using, but you know, but I guess again, I got a lot to learn.
Well, two things. I've only ever heard of one school that does not grant salutatorian and valedictorian based on grade point average, and they were a very selective private school that is able to get away with a little bit more of a subjective determining of what qualifies a well-rounded student that would make their, in this case this year, their salutatorian actually holds the highest grade point average, but their valedictorian, they believe, is involved more, I guess. But who determines that? How do you come up with a way to say that without angering the masses? And then the other thing I would say is,
Can I elaborate on that point?
yeah, go ahead.
I don't like the competition of who's going to have the highest number. I would prefer collaboration of the top IB students or all the students, and then at the end, the top 10 or top 15% or top 10 individual would vote on who better represents the school as a Val and Sal, instead of having people competing and going to see the teacher after class and crying that they want another grade higher. I don't like that.
There are schools that don't recognize valedictorian and salutatorian and recognize, say, top 10. And there are, I would also say at college, especially if you're applying at that high level, like that you would be in contention for valedictorian and salutatorian, don't consider it as heavily as you might think. Like if you are in the top 10% or 20%, say you're getting all A's still, that's usually enough. As long as you're doing everything else, you're taking the most rigor, your essays are as good as they can be, you're involved in everything you can, I think colleges will accept it just as good as if you were salutatorian or valedictorian. And that's coming from third. So
Yeah,
I'm close, but not quite.
I don't mean to take away from your efforts or the rigor of the higher programs. My brain doesn't work that way. I mean, there's 3 feet in a yard. There's standardized measurements that, I don't know.
Are all the grades considered? Tim, for GPA is PE, is that grade considered? Mm-hmm. It is?
Yes.
Okay.
And,
So all the grade, there's no ungraded, every course that you take?
Theory of knowledge is pass-fail.
This might be, again, an opportunity where we have to kind of hear both sides, because it's really easy to go one way or the other, right? And there are schools, and Andrew always brings up great points.
Yep.
And when he talked about some schools having top 10 or top 10%, there's a benefit in that in terms of it takes away some of that competition, Robert, you were talking about. And we've seen in education where students, their parents, will force this child to take a certain class because it's going to help them get to that Val or Sal. We also need to hear from our guidance folks, because there are some very lucrative scholarships that are out there that are directed to Vals and Sals. And what's that impact look like for our students if we were to consider, dropping Val Sal distinction and going to a 10% or top 10? And I don't know what those are, but I think we want to have all of that information going in. We also need to hear, and so much good discussion going on this one, but I just want to make sure, I think it's important that we hear on both sides, because at some point in Massena's history, this was implemented. I don't know the history of it. I don't know the whys of it. I can guess, but again, that's all it's going to be, and I think we need to hear what those were. How valid do those remain today, and has enough changed, or has enough of our opinion changed that it makes sense to alter how that's done? But let me go back to Mr. Oliver, probably Mr. Jordan, and some others. What is the history where did it come from? Why did it come? And let's hear the arguments on both sides. And not fair probably this year to make the change.
Yeah,
We've got
yeah.
LaSalle's. But
I
as we
just-
talk about long-term,
I thought it was a point of time to bring it up because it's changing now, so I just want to talk about it.
No, I'm glad you did. I think it's something that we definitely should research as like a long-term goal. Maybe, as
Yeah.
you said, we can't solve it for this year, but, or maybe even next year, but we should really look at it. I remember we used to have that discussion in the building leadership team meetings. And all the department chairs had to come together and they had to present why they believed that it should be weighted or shouldn't be weighted, including guidance, the guidance department chair. I think Roy Bixby was the guidance department chair at that time.
so it's quite a time back.
Yes, it is.
And I do want to say, so I can save Mr. Peretta some sleep time tonight, I'm not finding it in policy, so you can probably
I didn't
not have to
I didn't think you would. I was on the policy committee for
I
quite a
know.
few years and we never did that or I would have jumped all over it.
Well, you did miss the dogs.
Huh?
You did miss the dogs.
Hi. No, I caught it tonight.
I know you did.
I knew about the other dog
I
policies.
know you did.
Any other items for future agendas?
It's not an agenda, but I'd like to comment on the fact that at the beginning of the meeting, we had somebody from the public that came in and spoke, and it's not easy for people to come like this and talk about their concerns. And the way we answered it, I'm not comfortable. Like we just moved on, like we ignored totally what they just said. I would have liked that we address it and say, we're going to come back to you, or Mr. Ron's going to get back to them, or that we listen and we appreciate it, and we're going to take care of that, or we're going to address it. I feel like we totally ignored them. They just left them. We didn't say nothing.
That was what Paul indicated in the beginning, that we will not be responding.
No, but at least
He made reference to that it could be addressed later once we hear the concerns.
it may.
But he
So,
didn't say anything at the end, is what you're saying,
Yes,
as they're
yes.
done. I
So
got
you
that.
probably are already in communication with them?
Yes.
So that I'm glad to hear now, but I would have liked to hear that earlier, before they leave.
We were sent an email concerning that earlier today.
But yeah, that's what I would have liked to hear. Like, I know, we know, but they don't, maybe they know, but I feel like we left them dry. Just have a transitional sentence just saying, thank you, we're going to address it in further emails or phone communication.
I tried to be polite and say thank you, but I was definitely not interested in.
I felt it was very cold, my feeling.
Okay.
I would say that if you did continue a conversation on that,
No,
I would, I might like try to step away because I don't really feel comfortable. Like that was kind of it. Not something I would like to hear more about.
No, not that I wanted to drag it, I just wanted to have a closure, some kind of moment or a word, something.
Paul, if I could, just one
Sure.
thing. So this has been just a great meeting, not only because of the solid discussion, but because we could actually hear each other. And
Absolutely.
I was going to say,
Thank you, Mr. Lincoln.
Yes, thank you very much, Chris.
You
Thank you.
10 out of 10.
Yes.
The setup is the best we
Yes.
ever had, the
Yep.
sound and
This
visual.
Yep.
So I just wanted to recognize Mr. Lincoln.
And
Once
the s-
again, he goes above and beyond.
And the size of the table also, where we feel like we're together instead of being
Yeah. I
an
think
audience or whatever.
That helps. We could even hear Robert clearly.
Yes, yes.
Okay, we do have need for an executive session following the meeting. There will be no action taken following the meeting, but this has to do with items leading to employment, appointment, discipline, et cetera, on particular persons or corporations. Do I have a motion
So
for
moved.
executive session? All in favor? And once again, there will be no action taken after executive session. Thank you very much.